Close your eyes, just for a few seconds, and remember a moment when you were absolutely 100% sure of something. Maybe it was your righteousness in an argument with a loved one, or your unwavering belief in an idea at work, your confidence that you knew exactly how one should live, what success is, what justice is. Try to feel that certainty again, that feeling. It's so dense, so real, so irrefutable. It lives somewhere in your chest, warming you from the inside. It tells you, the world is exactly like this, and it's obvious. And now, I want you to imagine a quiet, Athenian square, a hot day, dusk glitters in the sun's rays, and a plain, no longer young man approaches you, with a large forehead and a piercing gaze. He doesn't threaten you, he doesn't shout, he doesn't argue, he simply asks you a question, just one, seemingly simple, childish even, and at the very moment you try to answer it, something strange happens. That very same, dense, warm certainty inside you suddenly begins to crack, like thin ice under your feet. You suddenly realize with horror that you cannot explain even what you were so sure of just a moment ago. Your own thoughts, your convictions, they crumble to dust from a single, correctly posed question. This man is Socrates, and his question is not just curiosity. It is an intellectual scalpel, the sharpest tool for dissecting delusions that humanity has ever invented. And the most amazing, the most incredible thing in this whole story is that this scalpel is available to you, too. You can learn to use it. You can learn to ask questions that will reveal the essence of any problem, expose the most cunning manipulations, cleanse your thinking of husks, and lead you to such clear, such transparent, such well-founded conclusions that it will seem like a real superpower. In a world where we are attacked daily by tons of information, opinions, fakes, and advertising, this ability is not just a nice bonus. It is a matter of your intellectual survival. And today, we will take this scalpel in our hands and learn to work with it. Part 1. The man who knew that he knew nothing. Imagine ancient Athens, the cradle of democracy, philosophy, art, a city full of bright, famous people, brilliant orators, genius strategists, celebrated poets, and against the backdrop of all this Vanity Fair, he appears. Socrates, the son of a stonemason and a midwife, a man who did not write a single book in his entire life. He left behind no treatise. All his philosophy, all his teaching were conversations, dialogues, questions and answers in the city square. And here's what's astonishing. The Delphic oracle, the most authoritative source of truth for the entire Hellenic world, proclaimed this strange, ever-questioning man, the wisest of all living. When Socrates was told this, he, according to legend, was very surprised, and he decided to verify it. He went to those whom everyone considered sages, politicians, military leaders, poets, and he asked them questions. And what did he discover? He discovered that they were not wise. They only thought they were wise. They were full of confidence in their knowledge, but could not give a coherent answer to a simple, fundamental question. And what is this thing you are talking about? What is the beautiful? What is the good? What is justice? And then Socrates understood a terrible and beautiful truth. His wisdom lies not in him knowing more than everyone else, but in him being aware of the limits of his ignorance. He knows that he does not know much, and they do not. That was the secret. I know that I know nothing. This is not a pose of modesty. It is the starting point of any true knowledge. It is intellectual honesty brought to an absolute. And his method, the Socratic method, is, in essence, a technology for turning unconscious ignorance into conscious ignorance. It is a way to make our minds do the same work that Socrates did with the Athenians. It is a way to break through the fog of our own assumptions, labels, and dogmas to something more genuine, more solid, more true. Part 2. The mechanism of the scalpel. 2 stages of the method. The first stage of the method is the most dramatic, the most painful, and the most necessary. The ancient Greeks called it Elenchos testing, refutation, a stress test. Imagine a sculptor who takes a block of marble. His first task is not to carve the details, but to cut away everything superfluous, to remove large chunks, to reveal the rough contour of the future statue. Elenchos is precisely the cutting away of everything superfluous, all the growths of false knowledge that prevent us from seeing the true form of thought. How does this intellectual sculptor work? He acts according to a clear algorithm. Step 1. Request a definition. The raw material. Socrates always began with a seemingly simple and benevolent request. He would approach a person who was confident, say, in what courage is, and ask, I beg you, explain to me, what is courage? What could be difficult about that? But that's the genius of it. He asks for a definition, not an example, not a description, but an essential definition, one that would cover all cases of courage and exclude everything that is not courage. Socrates modern. I heard you say that our colleague Ivan showed courage at the presentation. What, in your opinion, is courage? Colleague, well, it's when you're not afraid to take risks. You act confidently. Socrates, interesting. So, any person who isn't afraid of risk is courageous. Say, a pickpocket who isn't afraid of the risk of being caught, is he courageous? Colleague, oh, no, of course not. That's a crime. Socrates, so, the mere absence of fear is not enough. There must be some goal, some good. Courage must be directed towards something good. Do you see what happened? Just a couple of questions and the initial, vague definition has already cracked. It turned out it doesn't work. It doesn't withstand the test of a counterexample. Step 2. Systematic interrogation and revealing contradictions. And here Socrates launches his main machine, a chain of questions that leads the interlocutor through the labyrinth of their own beliefs and gently brings them to a wall they run into. Here is your basic toolkit for Elenchos. Remember them. What do you mean by this word? The fundamental question demanding clarity. Can you give an example? Embodying abstraction in specifics. Does this example always apply? Is it always true? Searching for the boundaries of the statement's applicability. Can we imagine a situation where this wouldn't work? A weapon of mass destruction against dogmas, the counterexample. How does your current statement align with what you said a minute ago? Exposing the internal inconsistency of the belief system. The goal of this stage is not to humiliate the interlocutor, not to show oneself as smarter. The goal is therapeutic. It is a surgical operation to remove an intellectual tomb of false knowledge, and like any operation, it can be painful, but without it recovery is impossible. Part 3. From emptiness to insight. The birth of truth, myutics, and so, after the storm of Elenchos, silence sets in. The silence of perplexity. Your interlocutor, or you yourself, in a dialogue with yourself, is in a state the Greeks called aporia, a state of impasse, of having no way out. Old beliefs are destroyed. New ones are not yet there. This can be unpleasant, even scary. And it is at this moment that the time comes for the second, constructive stage. Socrates called it myutics, the midwife's art. His mother was a midwife who helped children be born, and Socrates himself considered himself a midwife who helped truth be born. He was convinced that every person's soul already contains knowledge, truth, but it is unborn. It slumbers, and the task of the sage is not to insert it from the outside, but to help it be born. How do these intellectual births proceed? Changing the tactics of questions. Instead of destructive "why is this not so?" questions, constructive "what if?" How could we? Let's imagine that. Questions begin. Proposing hypotheses. Perhaps courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to act in spite of fear, when reason and the good demand it. Maybe justice is not simply giving each his due, but giving each what contributes to his flourishing and the flourishing of the entire polis. Collaborative search. Let's think together. What definition could we formulate that would be resistant to all those counterexamples we found? At this stage, You transform from an investigator exposing contradictions into a midwife, helping a new, stronger, and clearer thought to be born. Part 4. The Wings of Thought. Induction and Deduction. Socrates was not only a master of dialogue, but also a brilliant logician. He intuitively used two fundamental paths of thought movement, which would only be formalized centuries later. 1. Induction. The path from the particular to the general. This is when we gather many specific, particular cases and, based on them, derive a general rule. Socrates constantly asked, "Give an example," and another example, and another. He collected a collection of manifestations of courage to understand its essence. Question for self-analysis. When you say something like "all rich people are greedy," or "you can't trust management," ask yourself, on how many specific, verified examples is this generalization of mind based? Is this sample sufficient to make such a global conclusion? Induction teaches us humility and caution in our generalizations. 2. Deduction. The path from the general to the particular. This is when, having a verified general rule, we apply it to a new, particular situation. We are, as it were, unfolding the general knowledge. Example. If, as a result of my eutics, we came to the conclusion that courage is reasonable action in spite of fear, for the sake of achieving a significant good, then we can now deductively analyze any action. Is a lifeguard jumping into the water after a drowning person an act of courage? Yes, because there is risk, fear, but it is justified by the goal of saving a life, significant good, and is, presumably, weighed reasonableness. These two wings, induction and deduction, when used together, allow your thinking not just to fly, but to fly accurately towards the goal, bypassing the fogs of delusion and the rapids of hasty conclusions. Part 5. The Method in Action. Dissecting a modern myth. Let's break away from antiquity and land this method here and now. Let's take one of the most common and pernicious beliefs of our time. To be happy, you need to think positively. Imagine you are saying this to Socrates, and he, with his inherent curiosity, begins his interrogation phase. Elenchos, destroying the illusion. Socrates, what do you call positive thinking? Does it mean not allowing negative thoughts into your consciousness? Well, yes. Focusing on the good. Socrates, interesting. And if a person has a toothache, and they focus on the good, ignoring the pain, will the tooth stop hurting? Or will the problem get worse? No. But that's physical pain. Socrates, and emotional pain, is it less real? If a person suppresses sadness, anger, disappointment, do they disappear? Or do they go deep inside, to manifest later as illness or depression? Do you really believe that ignoring part of reality is the right path to happiness? Phase my eutics, helping a new idea to be born. Socrates, let's think together. Perhaps happiness is not in thinking only positively. Perhaps it's in something else. For example, in the ability to consciously and fearlessly meet all of one's emotions, both joy and sorrow. In the skill of accepting reality as a whole, rather than cutting out convenient pieces of it. In the courage to be sad when it's sad, and to be angry when there's a reason, but not allowing these emotions to control you completely. Do you see what happened? We transformed a slogan from a self-help magazine into a subject of deep philosophical inquiry. We moved from the toxic command "be positive" to a healthy, complex, and much more realistic idea of emotional awareness and integrity. Part 6. Your turn. A week of Socratic self-dialogue, and so we have come to the most important part. To the moment when history and theory must turn into practice. Into your personal practice. The tool lies before you. Brilliant, honed over centuries. But it is dead until it is in your hands. Therefore, I want to propose to you not just homework. I want to propose an experiment on your own consciousness. For 1 week, become Socrates for yourself. Here is your plan of action. Every day, catching yourself on some automatic, confident thought. Stop and conduct a 5-minute Socratic dialogue with yourself. Step 1. Catch the belief. My work is meaningless. I will never learn this. This person always acts in such a way. Step 2. Ask, what does this actually mean? Give a definition. What is meaningless work? Specifically. Step 3. Find counterexamples. Were there moments when it seemed meaningful? Can I find any meaning in it, even a small one? Step 4. Check for contradictions. I think my work is meaningless, but at the same time I strive to do it well. How does that align? Step 5. Help a new understanding to be born. Maybe it's not about the work, but about my attitude towards it. Maybe meaning isn't given to me from above, but is something I can bring into any activity, and I will be immensely grateful if you share the fruits of your internal dialogues in the comments. Describe which belief you investigated, what questions you asked, and what conclusions, even if intermediate, you came to. Let's create here not just a comment section, but a living, breathing laboratory of clear thinking, where we, like the disciples in the garden long ago, will help each other give birth to truth by asking each other the right, honest, Socratic questions. Conclusion. The philosophy of the question in the final analysis. The Socratic method is not just a technique, it is a philosophy of life. It is a certain stance towards the world and towards oneself. The stance of an eternal seeker, an eternal student. It is the willingness at any moment to question the dearest, most habitual, most obvious of one's beliefs, and to find in this not a threat, but liberation. Because every destroyed false belief is a step towards greater freedom. Freedom from dogmas, from manipulations, from one's own limitations. It is the courage to live in a state of question, not in a state of answer. Because an answer is the end of the path, and a question is the path itself. An endless, exciting path of cognition. In a world that demands quick answers, categorical judgments, and unconditional confidence from us. The art of asking questions, the art of doubting, the art of saying, I don't know, but I want to figure it out, becomes an act of intellectual courage, a form of resistance to the dictatorship of simple solutions, your mind. It can become that very Athenian agora, where an eternal, never-ending dialogue takes place, where your thoughts, your ideas, your beliefs undergo stress tests, and in this dialogue, not just knowledge is born, wisdom is born. That very Socratic wisdom, sober, clear, knowing no peace and not seeking it. You can make your thinking so clear that it truly becomes your superpower, the ability to see the essence. If this journey into the depths of your own thinking has resonated with you, and you want to continue developing this skill, exploring the most powerful tools for the mind with us from logic to cognitive psychology, then subscribe to the channel and hit the bell. Many more discoveries await us on this endless path to clarity. Thank you for being here today. Remember, the most important dialogue you will have to conduct your entire life is the dialogue with yourself. And the most important question in this dialogue is always the next one. Until we meet again on the air.